woke up with a hand covering my mouth and a gun pressed against my ribs. "If you scream, you die," a male voice whispered in the dark. My heart was racing so fast I thought I was going to faint. The dorm room, which had always been the safest place in the world for me, now felt like a prison, and behind the 2 men in black who were holding me to the bed, there was a third, standing in the shadow of the window, just watching me. He didn't say anything, but his silence was more threatening than any weapon. 3 hours earlier, I had just been grading teenage essays during the evening break at boarding school, mentally complaining about my boring life. Now, I had a gun to my ribs, because the name Helena Duarte appeared in the secret diary of a dead mobster. I just had no idea why. "She woke up," said the one with the gun, tightening his grip on my waist. "I understand," the voice in the shadows replied, too calmly for that setting. He took 2 steps forward, and the dim light from the street lamp finally hit his face. I recognized that face, not personally, obviously, but enough to chill you to the bone. Matteo Rinaldi, the only son of the former head of the Rinaldi family, the same man who dominated headlines in recent months after his father was murdered in an alleged settling of accounts. The same man who is now being called the King of Ashes in news reports. Dangerous, impenetrable. It's completely outside my reality as a literature teacher who earned little and slept in school dormitories. Until now. "Who are you?" he asked, as if he were not fully aware of the name that was printed on my school record, my ID badge, my overdue bills. I tried to answer, but the hand over my mouth wouldn't let me. "Let go," Matteo ordered, without raising his voice. The henchman obeyed immediately. The power wielded by that solta, a slang term for a loose cannon, said far more about who he was than any news report. I swallowed hard. "Why, who are you?" I fired back, because sometimes panic activates my dumb side instead of my rational one. One of the men chuckled softly. Matteo only tilted his head slightly, as if I were a curious enigma. "Interesting," he murmured. "Someone who doesn't pretend not to recognize me." "I recognize people who come into my room at 3 a.m. with a gun," I retorted, my voice trembling. "It usually leaves a mark." His laughter was as short as it was dangerous. "Name." "You already know," I replied instinctively. His eyes darkened a shade. "Name," he repeated, more slowly. "Helena. Helena Duarte." The 3 men exchanged quick glances, and that's when I understood. Yes, they knew, but they wanted to hear it from me, as confirmation, as a sentence. "Why was your name there?" Matteo asked. "Where?" I tried to buy time. He took something out of the inside pocket of his coat, an old black leather notebook, its edges worn, a diary. "Does that mean anything to you?" he asked. My brain just froze a little. I had never seen that diary in my life. Even so, my stomach turned just looking at it. "No," I replied honestly. One of the men behind me grumbled. "She's lying." Matteo didn't take his eyes off mine. "Are you sure, Helena?" "I've never seen this," I repeated more firmly. "Why would my name be there? I didn't even know your father." "That was my mistake." Mention the father. For a second, something cracked on his face, an almost imperceptible fissure in his perfect control. "I didn't say it was my father's diary," Matteo said quietly. The blood drained from my face. "So, how do you know who it belongs to?" I finished, breathless. He took a step closer to the bed. I could smell the expensive perfume mixed with the scent of rain and gunpowder. "Because I saw him die holding this," Matteo replied. "And the last thing he scribbled before going down to hell was your name." Silence. The 3 men were staring at me, the diary between us. My heart is pounding too loudly. "So I'll ask just one more time," Matteo continued. "Why did the name Helena Duarte appear in the final diary of confessions of the man who ordered my father's murder?" The question hung in the air like a new weapon pointed at me. I had no idea, but Matteo was absolutely certain that the answer was here, in me, and men like him didn't leave a room without answers, even if they had to break someone to find them. "I swear I don't know anything," I blurted out. "I'm just a teacher of literature at a boarding school. I have nothing to do with you, with the Mafia, with whatever you do." "Literature teacher," Matteo repeated, as if testing the word in his mouth. "Is that why she corrects essays until so late?" He looked at my desk, a pile of tests, colored pens, a mug of cold coffee. His attention to detail made me even more nervous. "Yes, I have 142 essays on Dom Casmurro to grade. If you're going to kill me, At least wait until I return the grades. My students already hate me enough. It came out more ironic than I intended. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly. It was almost a smile. Almost. "Are you afraid, Helena?" he asked. "You showed up in my room with a gun at 3 a.m. What do you think?" "I think you're scared, but you keep responding sarcastically," Matteo assessed. "That's interesting." "That's desperation," I corrected. He moved even closer. I instinctively recoiled, leaning completely against the headboard of the bed. Matteo stopped inches away. I could see up close the thin scar cutting across her right eyebrow, the absurdly long eyelashes, the tired shadow around her eyes. He was cruelly handsome, a type of beauty that's frightening. "Look at me," he ordered. I was already looking, my whole body even, but I obeyed anyway, as if there were an even more complete way to face someone. "I know when someone is lying," he continued, his voice low. "It's literally the only reason I'm still alive." "Congratulations," I murmured. He ignored it. "You're confused, scared. This is real. So I'm going to assume you really don't know why this man wrote your name before he died." A slight sense of relief washed over my body. Minimum. "Great," I whispered. "Then you can go away and forget I exist. I promise I'll forget you too. I never saw anything, never heard anything, nothing." Matteo studied me for a few more seconds, and then it killed any chance I had of sleeping peacefully again in my life. "No," he said. "You're coming with me." The air left my lungs. "What is it like?" I choked. "Pack her things," he said, without looking at the other two. "Documents, cell phone, everything. I'm not going anywhere with you." I tried to get up, but the heavy hand of the brute to my right easily pushed me back onto the bed. "Yes, go ahead," Matteo replied, too calmly. "Because if someone wrote your name in the diary of the man who ordered my father's murder, it means 2 things. He raised 2 fingers, as if he were giving a lesson. 1, you know something that you don't yet know you know. That didn't make any sense, I blurted out. 2, he continued, ignoring her. You're in danger, and not a little. Danger? From what? From whom? From all the wrong people who also want to know why the hell their name is there, he explained. And who won't bother to find out. One of the men threw my backpack onto the bed. Okay, boss. Boss, I repeated bitterly. Of course. Get up, Helena, Matteo ordered. Are you kidnapping me? Would you prefer I call it enforced protection? He retorted. I'd prefer you leave my room. That's not among the options. I have work tomorrow, I argued, because my brain clearly couldn't keep up with the level of chaos. I have tests to grade, classes to teach, a report card to finalize, and you have an indirect death threat by association, he interrupted. If it consoles you, I bet no other teacher at the school has that on their list. I stared at him, incredulous. Are you joking now? I'm trying to stop you from completely losing it, he replied curtly. Get up, now. Something about the tone left no room for discussion, and the worst part is that a very small, very annoying part of me believed him. If someone had actually written my name in a diary of criminal confessions, then someone, somewhere, knew who I was, and I was taking notes. If I go with you, I said, my voice faltering, do you promise I'll come back? He took a second to answer, 1 second long enough to give me goosebumps all over. If it's up to me, Matteo finally said, nobody will touch you, and you'll be back. But I don't control everything, he admitted. I only control enough to keep you breathing. It wasn't exactly reassuring, but for the first time that morning, it didn't sound like a threat. It sounded like a promise. Twisted, dangerous, but promising. I don't trust you, I whispered. Great, he replied. It would be worrying if I trusted him. Our eyes met for a second longer than they should have. It was quick, but it was there, a tiny spark amidst the terror. And that, honestly, scared me almost as much as the rest. Because if there was one thing my mother always taught me, it was this. Dangerous men are never just dangerous. They can also be fascinating. And fascination sometimes kills more slowly than a bullet. More eyes. The car that took me from school to Matteo's underworld looked more like an armored ship than anything else. Darkened windows. Smells like leather. Silence. I was squeezed into the back seat, between my backpack and the arm of one of the henchmen. Matteo was in the front, next to the driver. But the rearview mirror was enough for me to notice that, even without looking directly at me, he knew exactly every move I made. Helena, he called after a few minutes. Your address. You already broke into my room, took my phone. You probably have all that stuff. Why ask? Because I'd rather hear it from you than from a file, he retorted. I took a deep breath, trying not to tremble. I don't have another address. The school is where I live. My parents died. My ex-boyfriend is probably doing very well without me. There's no one else you can use against me, if that's what you want to know. The silence that followed was different, less tense, more heavy. When did you lose your parents? He asked more quietly. 3 years ago. Car accident. Were you there? No, I replied. I was teaching. The police took me out of the room in the middle of the students' essay writing session. I remembered the floor spinning, the coordinator hugging me, the students looking on in fear, not understanding anything. I didn't realize I was squeezing my own hand until my fingers hurt. My father also died in a way that was unexpected, Matteo commented, without looking back. I know, he slipped out. You read newspapers, he observed. I read. So you know what they say about me. I know what they say about you. I don't know what's true. What's the difference? He challenged. For those on the outside, none, I replied. For those on the inside, everything. He remained quiet, but the perspective in the rearview mirror has changed. For a second, it wasn't the king of ashes staring back. He was just a tired man, perhaps with more blood on their hands than any human being should ever have to bear. Have you always been like this? He asked. Like this? Answering more than they ask, and asking more than I should. Probably, I admitted. It never worked very well in my favor, but that's what makes you, he added. I swallowed hard. I hated the way he perceived things. Too fast, too deep, too dangerous. Matteo, I ventured. Try? Why did you come yourself? You could have sent any of those guys to pick up a lost teacher in the middle of the night. It's not exactly the job of a mafia boss. The diary is with me, he replied. And I don't delegate anything involving the man who ordered my father's murder. Even if it's a completely random teacher, he looked at me in the rearview mirror. Especially if it's a completely random teacher whose name he made sure to write down himself before he died, Matteo corrected. Nothing about you is random to me now, Helena. My stomach turned again. That sounds scary. It's all true. The car entered a tunnel, the lights dancing across his face. Somewhere between the boarding school and the dark glass building where we parked, a certainty was born within me. I was entering a world where nobody talked about everything, where every silence concealed 3 secrets. And for some reason that I still didn't understand, I had become a piece on that chessboard, perhaps the most fragile part. But still, ask. I just had no idea what kind of game Matteo was willing to play, so as not to get lost, or so as not to lose the truth that he believed I was keeping hidden. Even without knowing it. The elevator went up so fast that my ears pressed against the wall. Matteo got out first, without waiting, and I was practically shoved by the guys behind me. The doors opened onto a rooftop that didn't look like an apartment. It looked like a headquarters. Floor-to-ceiling glass, open city views, dark furniture, few personal belongings, everything too organized, too cold. But there was a piano in the corner. That didn't fit with the rest. Where exactly are you taking me? I asked, trying to keep up with his pace. Safe house, one of the men replied. A safe house is usually a discreet place, not a showcase of a perfect target, I retorted, pointing to the absurdly large windows. Bulletproof glass, Matteo said, without turning around. You can scream, no one will hear. You can shoot, no one will get through. Are you sure that was meant to calm me down? I snapped. He ignored it again. Enzo, check the entrances. Luca, get her some water. Helena, come here. He went into a hallway. I followed him. The room he stopped in was huge, but simple. Big bed, wardrobe, bathroom, an armchair near the window. He pointed. It will be yours. How long? Until I understand why you're in the middle of this. You talk as if I put myself here on purpose, I retorted. Matteo closed the door with his foot, trapping just the 2 of us inside. No henchmen, no witnesses. The only mobster everyone feared. And me. Let's save time, he began, leaning against the wall opposite the bed, arms crossed. Tell me everything you remember from the last few days that might seem insignificant. Insignificant type. My student who wrote 3 pages explaining to me why Capitu really betrayed him, or anything out of the ordinary. He cut me off. Strange people at the school gate, anonymous calls, cars following you. Things being moved around in your room. That last one made me swallow hard. My diary, I whispered. How it is. My diary, I repeated louder. I have a notebook where I write things down. Ideas for class, things from my head. I always leave it in the nightstand drawer. Last night when I went to write, it was a little out of place. I thought it was just my imagination. Now, Matteo straightened his body. Someone went through your things before I did. Try. And you don't lock the door? This is a boarding school, I explained nervously. The biggest threat I expected was some student coming in crying about a breakup, not a psychopath with a diary of criminal confessions. He took a deep breath, patiently. It seems that underestimating risk is a pattern for you, Helena. Sorry for not living in war mode 24 hours a day, I retorted. His eyes narrowed. Anyone could have entered that room, read your name somewhere, written somewhere else. Did you show that diary to anyone? No, I replied too quickly. I mean, not consciously. Sometimes I leave it open on the bed, but it's more of a messy notebook than a movie diary. I want to see, he said. Your notebook. It stayed there. It didn't stay, Matteo retorted. I asked them to take all the papers that were yours as well. He left the room without warning. I was alone for a few seconds that felt like hours. What could I have written that would interest someone like that? The thought of someone leafing through my most intimate pages made me more nauseous than a gun to the ribs. Matteo came back with my backpack and my notebook. Blue cover, coffee sticker, a dog ear on the end. This one? He confirmed. Try. I can? You've already broken into my room, kidnapped me, and snooped into my life. Reading my diary will be the icing on the cake, I replied. He ignored the jab, opened the notebook, and slowly flipped through it. My thoughts were laid bare there. Essay ideas, poetry excerpts, rants about being alone, random phrases from students, memories of my parents. And then he stopped. His eyes darkened a shade. Who wrote this? Matteo asked, his voice lower. It depends on the page. I tried to see. I write almost everything. He turned the notebook towards me. In the middle of a page, among my notes about a class, there was a sentence in a different handwriting. Pie. Hasty. Still, strangely, familiar. He'll come after you when I fall. If you're reading this, run, Lena. Signed, D. My mouth went dry. I don't remember ever seeing that before. Is that your handwriting? Matteo asked. No, I replied, my heart racing. I've never seen anything like it. I swear. Who calls you Lena? Nobody. Nobody else. My stomach gave me a knot. My father, she said, her voice barely audible. He used to call me that when I was a child. Your father is dead, Matteo reminded her. You said so yourself. And how many years ago? 3. And you think he wrote this after he died? He teased. I think someone's messing with my head, I replied, my voice faltering. Because this lyric, I ran my finger over the line of the D. It was identical. Let me see your ID, Matteo asked. For what? Now, Helena. I took the document from my wallet with trembling hands and handed it over. He read my information, then flipped through the notebook until the last page. Stamped in a corner, almost invisible, a mark I had never noticed before. A symbol, 2 intertwined circles with a line through the middle. He stiffened. Do you know what this is? He asked. A strange drawing? It's the symbol of the family that ordered my father's murder, Matteo said. And also the symbol printed on the cover of that man's diary. My skin crawled all over. Someone put that in my notebook, I whispered. Someone entered her room, rummaged through her things, wrote a note in her dead father's handwriting, and left my enemy's symbol stamped here as a signature, Matteo recounted. And a few hours later, the name Helena Duarte appears in that same enemy's diary. When he spoke it aloud, it sounded like the script was too forced, but it was my life. Do you really think it's a coincidence, Professor? He concluded. Stop calling me teacher as if it were an insult, I retorted, more out of reflex than courage. What do you prefer? Hostage? Bait? Walking mystery? He retorted. Helena serve. Helena then. Matteo ran a hand through his hair, clearly making connections. Your father. What did he do? He was an accountant for a transport company. He looked at me as if I had said that my father was Santa Claus. Company name. Several. He was self-employed. Any regular customers? I don't know. I wasn't paying attention. I just wanted him to be home for dinner, not the people he was working with on spreadsheets. Do you remember seeing this symbol somewhere before? He pointed to the stamp. I strained my memory. Business cards on the table. Pastas. Blouses. A suit. A ring. Worse than... I began, my head throbbing. I think so. Where? He leaned forward. It was a ring he started wearing shortly before the accident, I said, the images flashing back. I joked that it looked like something from Freemasonry or something. He laughed, took his hand off the table, and changed the subject. Did the ring disappear after the accident? Matteo asked immediately. I didn't see any more, I admitted. In what context did your father die? Matteo insisted. A truck ran a red light. It hit their car. The report says so. Did you read the accident report about my parents? I read everything that comes into my life, he replied without blinking. And now that even includes traffic accident reports. You are sick. I'm alive, he corrected. And I'm starting to think that your parents' accident might not have been such an accident after all. That took the air out of my lungs. No, I denied. No, don't say that. They were coming back from a birthday party. It was raining. It was an accident. It was... My voice cracked. Matteo watched me for a few seconds, and for the first time since he came into my room, he dropped his boss act a little. Do you really think coincidence rules your life so much, Helena? He asked, more gently. Your father suddenly starts using the symbol of one of the most dangerous families in the country. 3 years later, he dies in an accident. Now, his daughter's name appears in the diary of another man connected to the same organization, hours after someone broke into her room and left a note in his handwriting. Stop, I whispered. Just stop. I'm not going to lie to you to spare you the trouble, Matteo said. If you want sugar, go to a psychologist. This is a different game. I laughed without humor. Are you always like this? As? Brutally honest and irritatingly logical. Almost always. It must be hell living with you. Ask my enemies, he shrugged. I don't think they're in a position to answer. Exactly. Despite the panic, the corner of my mouth threatened to turn up. Hatred. I hated that shadow of humor was affecting me in this chaos. Okay, I took a deep breath. Let's suppose you're right, that my father had ties to this family, that none of this is a coincidence, that I became a target without knowing it. What does that change? The truth is you're not just a random witness anymore, Matteo said. You're probably the only living clue to something they've hidden so well that they're willing to kill to protect it. I don't know anything. Yet. He took 2 more steps, stopping very close by. But I'll make you remember. That sounded terrifying in a completely wrong way, just so you know, I commented. An almost amused glint passed through his eyes. You understood what I meant. I don't know if I understand. What are you going to do? Hypnosis? Shock therapy? Throw me in a basement with an investigation board like in a serial killer movie? You're being dramatic. You are a kidnapper. In that case, I'm protective, he corrected. That's debatable. He let out a short sigh. Go take a shower. Drink some water. Eat something. Then we'll sit down, and you can tell me absolutely everything you can remember about your father, his clients, anything strange you've ever seen. Do you always boss people around like that? I asked. It almost always works. Congratulations. It works for me because you have 2 armed guys outside and I'm not stupid. He stared at me for a long second. Are you afraid of me, Helena? I'm afraid of what you represent, I admitted. But, of you, specifically. I stopped, surprised at myself. I don't know yet. That answer seemed to intrigue him more than anything else. This is insane, he muttered more to himself than to me. Welcome to my life ever since you walked into my room. He gave a half smile. Take a bath, Helena. What if I try to run away? I teased, half seriously, half testing. You won't make it to the elevator, he replied simply. Do you always have an answer for everything? For almost everything. Why don't you have one? Why the hell do I care so much about someone I met less than 2 hours ago? He blurted out dryly. My heart skipped a beat. It's not about me. It's about the information you think I have, I retorted quickly, trying to get my feet back on the ground. He held my gaze for a little longer. Repeat this as many times as you need to feel safe, Matteo said. But don't lie to yourself when it stops being true. I swallowed hard. You are arrogant. I'm a realist. He opened the door, making room. I went into the bathroom with the feeling that, of all the dangerous things on that rooftop, the most dangerous might just be this. The way he looked at me, as if I were an enigma he was determined to solve, no matter the cost. The hot water on my body was the only normal thing in that new world. I closed my eyes, letting the sound of the shower drown out the noise of my own head. My father, accident, ring with a symbol, note in my notebook. The name in the diary of a man who ordered the murder of the father of the guy who was now keeping me in forced protection. If this were a student essay, I would scribble in the margin, "Too forced, make it more believable." I laughed to myself, an almost hysterical sound. There was a knock at the door. "Helena," Matteo's voice came muffled. "There are clothes on the bed for you. If you take any longer, I'll think you've fainted. Relax, control freak," I replied loudly. "I'm alive." A short silence. "Don't call me a control freak. You got the control part right," I retorted. "Freak is up to you." I heard a grumble. Maybe I was going crazy, but teasing him calmed him down. As if while we were exchanging barbs, everything was still a little bit human. I remembered his eyes in the car when I talked about my parents. He knew what it was like to lose, and that, in a twisted way, connected me to him more than it should have. "Don't get attached, Helena," I murmured to myself. "He's dangerous in expensive clothes." I got out of the shower wrapped in a towel and picked up the clothes I had left on the bed. Black sweatpants, loose gray t-shirt. Comfortable, unexpectedly, careful. "Did you choose this?" I asked as I left the room and found Matteo leaning against the counter of the makeshift kitchen, fiddling with his cell phone. "Do I look like the type to choose a gray sweatshirt?" he retorted, looking up. "You look like the kind of person who only exists in a dark suit and dress shirt." One corner of his mouth turned up. "I have other layers, Helena. I hope some of them are cotton at least," I said, pointing to my sweatshirt. "Go eat." "Do you always give orders in the imperative mood?" I sat down on the stool. "It's efficient. Maybe not with everyone. It worked for you. Because I'm in shock, not because you're convincing." He placed a plate in front of me. Sandwich, juice, no visible poison. "Do you really think I would poison the centerpiece of a puzzle that I waited months to put together?" he asked, reading my eyes. "That's comforting in the most twisted way possible." "Come," I obeyed, more out of hunger than because of orders. His eyes lingered on me for a few seconds longer than would have been polite. "Stop staring at me while I'm eating. You're full of rules. You're full of stares. It's my job to observe." "Was your job to watch my room from the hallway too?" I raised an eyebrow. "I wanted to make sure you wouldn't try to jump out the window. That would be a very dramatic way to skip class. Trauma gives you bad ideas. Are you calling me traumatized? You lost your parents under suspicious circumstances, were taken from the only place you called home in the middle of the night, and are trapped in an apartment with 3 armed men and a mobster you only knew from the news. If that doesn't traumatize you, then something is definitely wrong with you. Do you offer free analysis or do you charge per session? For you, for now it's a freebie." The word "for now" gave me the creeps. "Matteo," I began hesitantly. "You hate your father?" He wasn't expecting that question. It took a few seconds to reply. "I hated him," he finally said. "Then I came to hate even more the person who took him from me. The truth is, when someone dies like that, the hatred just changes its target, but it doesn't disappear." "Do you think I'm targeting the wrong person?" I asked. "I think you don't have a target at all," he replied, "because you've spent 3 years accepting what they gave you as the official version." I had no reason to doubt. Now it's there. I took a deep breath, fiddling with the bread without actually eating it. "Will you help me find out the truth?" I asked, unable to look directly at her. "Of course," he replied simply. I looked at it right away. "Like this? Simple?" "It's not altruism," he warned. "Everything involving your father now involves the man who destroyed half my family. The truth you want is the same truth I need. You could have just answered yes, you know? I don't lie about my motives." His blunt honesty is sometimes irritating. "You already mentioned that. I'll reinforce it as many times as necessary." He laughed, but briefly. That laughter was dangerous, because it was weird. It's addictive. One of the men, Enzo, I think, entered the room. "Boss," he called. "There's some strange activity down there." Matteo immediately became serious. Define strange. Car parked for a long time. Fake license plate. 2 guys who seemed to be looking more at the facade and less at their cell phones. My hair stood on end. "Were you followed here from school?" I asked, my voice low. "Unlikely," Matteo replied, but his clenched jaw said otherwise. "It could be a coincidence," I ventured. He looked at me the way people look at children who believe in Santa Claus. "In my life, Helena, nothing is a coincidence twice." He stood up, already in command mode. "Enzo, Escape Route 2. Luca, garage camera. Nobody enters without my permission, and nobody touches it. Yes, sir. I'm here. I stood up as well. I hate being treated like a package. You're a walking target, not a package. Now go to your room. I'm not going to stay locked up like a shoe. He is going, yes. Matthew. He crossed the space in 2 steps and stopped so close that the air between us seemed to disappear. We don't have time for your stubbornness right now, he said, his voice low and sharp. Down there might be people who wouldn't think twice before shooting a teacher just because her name was in the wrong place. Do you want to test that theory? My mouth went dry. No. Then go into that room and stay away from the window and door until I speak. Do you decide whether to be reasonable or make me carry you? The challenge in his eyes captivated me. Part of me almost wanted to test it just out of spite. Another part, the part with a survival instinct, screamed louder. If you die down there, I'll haunt you for the rest of your life, I murmured, giving in and backing away toward the hallway. If I die down there, someone far worse than me will show up here, he retorted, and you'll wish I were alive. I stopped at the bedroom door. Matthew, what was that? He turned around. Come back, I said, before my pride would stop me. Please. For a second, the perfect control cracked again. Something warm passed through his gaze. That's the plan, Lena. The nickname slipped out unintentionally. Both. My chest tightened in a strange way. Before I could comment, he had already turned his back, cold again, heading towards danger as if it were routine. When the bedroom door closed behind me, the silence seemed even louder than the gunshots I feared hearing, and for the first time since it all began, the idea completely swept over me. Perhaps the mobster's diary had revealed more than just my name. Perhaps he had placed me, irreversibly, at the center of a war that began long before I was born, and now it could end with me, or with him, or with the two of us. If there ever was a we. The attack began with sound. It wasn't a gunshot, yet. It was the sharp beep of something electronic coming from very close by, cutting through the silence of the room like a blade. I held my breath. 1 second. 2. 3. Then the ceiling lights flickered and went out. Total darkness. Matteo, I called, my voice faltering. Nothing. Just an echo of my own question. I knew he'd told me to stay away from the window, but instinct got the better of me. I slowly crawled over to the curtain and opened it just a tiny crack. From up here, I could only see part of the street, but it was enough. The car Enzo mentioned was still there. And now, a second pickup truck had pulled up right behind them. The headlights were off. 2 shadows jumped out of the back door, heading straight for the building. My throat closed up. The beeping frequency increased. It didn't come from the street. It came from there, from the inside, behind me. I turned slowly. The sound was coming from my cell phone, lying on the small table, connected to a small black device that wasn't mine. I blinked. It was small, with a red light flashing too fast. My body understood before my mind. This isn't mine, I whispered. There was a loud knock on the door. Helena! Matteo's voice came low and urgent. Open up, now. I ran. He opened the door before I could even reach the handle, bursting in like a hurricane. He had a gun in one hand, his cell phone in the other, his breathing rapid. Did you touch something that wasn't yours? He asked, his eyes scanning the room. No, it's just, my cell phone started beeping. There's something stuck to it. His expression hardened to a degree I had never seen before. Show, I pointed. He went to the small table and examined the device with a clinical eye. Tracker, he murmured. Sons of a... It's not over. He ripped off the device and stuffed it in his pocket. When did they put that up? I asked, already knowing I wouldn't have an answer. If you were in your dorm room before I arrived, they knew where you slept. Matteo calculated quickly. If they put you there later, it means someone on my side is working against me. Is someone you know? I repeated, freezing. Someone from the inside. He confirmed. Don't panic yet. Seriously? I let out a short laugh. You just said that people are breaking into my house with the help of someone you know, and that they put a tracking device on me. I'm going to put don't panic on my to-do list. Another sound echoed. No beeps, no footsteps. A metallic snap, as if someone had forced open a service door further down. Matteo's gaze became deadly. Forget the room, he decided. Come with me. Now. Where to? I asked, trying to keep up with his speed. To where I can bury you behind enough concrete. More and more comforting, I murmured. He pulled me by the wrist, pushing me down the dark hallway. The emergency generator hadn't yet switched on. so the only light came from the city outside. We entered a room I hadn't even noticed before. Small, almost claustrophobic, full of metal boxes and a panel with wires. Engine room, he informed. The walls here are thicker. Less glass, more chance of not being seen. Less chance of them seeing you too, I retorted. I'm not a priority right now. For me, it is. He left before I could record what he had said. He held my shoulders, positioning me behind a stack of boxes. Stay down, she ordered. Anything that happens, don't leave until you hear my voice. Mine, Helena. Don't open the door for anyone. You're scaring me in a new way, I confessed. Good. Fear keeps you alive. You're terrible at motivational quotes. He took a deep breath, his eyes lingering on mine for a second longer than they should have. His fingers loosened just a little on my skin. Don't die, Lena, he said, so quietly that perhaps it was only to himself. Neither do you, I replied, almost in a whisper. His eyes darkened with something strange. Anger, fear, something else. Lock it from the inside as soon as I leave. He closed the door, and I turned the key, trembling. The silence that followed was not silence. It was expected, waiting with a metallic taste in your mouth. I rested my forehead on my knee, trying to control my breathing. Down below, a dry thud echoed. Number. The first one. The sound pierced the concrete as if it were going straight into my chest. I didn't know whether to root for Matteo to shoot, or for him not to even need to. 2 more shots. Muffled screams. An impact on the outside wall caused the entire room to shake slightly. My hand instinctively reached for my sweatshirt pocket. It was empty. My cell phone had a tracking device on it. And now, with him, a terrible symbol of the kind of connection I was creating. Another knock. This time on the engine room door. Helena, Matteo's voice came, but distorted by the layer of metal. Open it. Quickly. My whole body wanted to obey, but his words resonated most strongly in my memory. My voice, Helena, mine. I pressed my ear against the door. Tell me something that only you and I know, I asked, my heart in my throat. Half a second of silence. The first essay you graded after your parents' accident was titled, The Day the World Stopped, he said quietly. You cried in the hallway, and you never told anyone. The ground shifted slightly beneath my feet. I had never said that out loud before. Yes, it was in my notebook. They are lions. I turned the key and opened it. Matteo was there, breathing heavily, his shirt stained with blood on his left shoulder. You're hurt, was the only thing I could say. It's not mine, he replied very quickly. A thick red thread dripped onto the floor at that exact moment, as if to contradict it. Your shoulder doesn't think so. It was a graze. Do you always bleed like this when it's just a graze? I gasped. In this house, bleeding is a sign that we're still alive. He attempted a half smile. I wanted to hit him, or to hug, or both. How many were there? I asked, trying to focus on the rational aspect. Too few to be a full-blown attack. Too many to be a test, he replied. 3 went in. 2 won't come out. 1 ran before I could catch it. Did you just kill 2 men? I asked, feeling my stomach churn, and at the same time, a strange wave of relief wash over me. Because whether it was them or us, use the verb that helps you sleep, he retorted. I survived. They didn't. I looked at the blood again. He saw. Are you going to faint? He asked. I'm a teacher, not a glass teacher. That doesn't answer the question. I'm not going to faint, I assured her, but sitting down would be great. He slowly pulled me out of the small room, keeping his body between me and the hallway. It was a subtle gesture, but completely protective. Enzo and Luca? I asked. Good. They know how to take care of themselves. At least someone here knows, right? I murmured. He took me back to the room and locked it from the inside. Take off your shirt, I said, before the filter activated. One of his eyebrows went up. In any other context, I would appreciate that phrase. You're bleeding in your room, I corrected. I've cleaned blood from a teenager's scraped knee before. A mobster's shoulder shouldn't be that different. I'm not a mafioso, okay? Shoulder of a businessman with a dubious past. Better. He took off his shirt in one swift motion. I tried not to take on more than necessary. I failed miserably. Tattoos climbed from his chest to his shoulder, down his biceps. Symbols, dates, one name crossed out, another superimposed. Thin scars, thick scars, old scars, stories that I wasn't sure I wanted to hear. He's staring, he observed, sitting on the edge of the bed. I'm assessing the battlefield, I retorted, heading to the bathroom to get the first aid kit I imagined a man like him would have. He had. Have they taken many shots there already? I asked, turning back. More than recommended. Which one is recommended? None, he replied. You're terrible at self-care. Do you remember how many medications you forgot to take in college? You talk about it as if you were there, I commented. I read about you, he reminded her. Dossier, file, history. There are mentions of you. You read too much. You write too much. Curfew, kids. I interrupted the conversation when I saw the wound up close. It's going to sting. I grabbed the antiseptic. He didn't even blink. You don't look like someone who's doing this for the first time, he commented. I've cleaned up cuts from students who fell off their bikes. I've cleaned my own knee when I hit the asphalt. He swallowed hard. I've cleaned blood off the kitchen floor when my mother cut her hand. It's not the first time I've seen red, Matteo. He was silent for a moment. You sometimes talk about them in the present tense, he noticed. It must be a defense mechanism, I replied. Or foolish hope. Perhaps you feel that they are still more alive than they led you to believe. It stung more than the antiseptic. Have you always been good at poking at open wounds? I retorted. I learned early on that pretending it doesn't hurt only delays healing, she replied, and it increases the risk of infection. Look at this, an emotional medical approach. You should be the therapist. I'm just surviving. You survive and bleed on the carpets, apparently. He laughed, despite everything. After finishing the dressing, I moved my hands away slightly. Ready. Thank you, he murmured. You're welcome, I replied, trying to ignore the fact that my hands were still on his warm skin. Too close. Too much time. Helena, he called, his voice a little lower. You understood one thing, right? Do you attract bullets? From now on, it's not just about the diary anymore. It's not just about my father. It's about you, he said. If they sent people here after tracking your cell phone, it's because they want you alive for now. Why? I don't know. But I know that. He stopped, searching for the words. I know that everything involving you right now is a war zone. I already understood that when I woke up with a gun. I retorted wearily. No, he insisted. You understand in theory. I'm talking about accepting it. Inside. What's the difference? The difference is that, when you accept it from within, you stop wasting energy denying it, and you start using your strength to survive together. You want me to, what? Sign a consent form for disaster? I want you to stop thinking this is a nightmare that will end if you behave well, he said bluntly. It won't. It's not punishment. It's not a game. It's war. And in this war, I need you to stop acting like a passive hostage. What exactly do you want me to become? Your partner in crime? I blurted out. I want you to become a real partner, he corrected. An investigative partner, a survival partner, a real partner. That word hung in the air. I'm not like you, Matteo, I reminded him. I didn't grow up with codes, guns, a criminal family. I grew up with books, birthday cake, and report cards. I don't know how to be strong in your world. But you already are, he retorted. You lost everything, rebuilt a life on your own, take care of a bunch of teenagers every day, and you still have the nerve to respond to a guy armed with sarcasm. That's stupidity, not courage. Call it what you want, he shrugged. But that's what makes you different. Different how? I haven't met many people who looked at me like that, knowing what I'm capable of, he admitted, staring back. Most tremble, or pretend to. You feel fear and keep talking. So I'm a nuisance, he concludes. You move, he corrected. The silence that followed was thick, heavy, electric. I stood up, needing some distance. Okay, let's suppose I'm on board with this partnership idea of yours, I said, walking over to the window. Where do we start? Because of what always saves and destroys families. Money, he said. If your father was connected to them, it wasn't just out of sympathy. There must have been a flow of money passing through his hands. You want to see his things, I concluded. I want everything. Notes, folders, old computers, shoeboxes. People like them don't trust banks or the cloud 100%. I don't have any of that with me, I replied. When they died, I couldn't stand staying in the house. I sold everything. What's left is in a self-storage unit in the suburbs. Where? North Zone, near the old viaduct, I replied. Why? Because we're going there early tomorrow. Are you crazy? I'm looking for answers, and I'm trying to stay alive. I'll go with you, he replied, as if that solved everything. Brilliant. You, me, and a Mafia family feud going for a stroll in a neighborhood warehouse. Do you have a better solution? I opened my mouth, I closed it. No, I admitted. So, for now, we'll stick with mine. Do you always do this? I asked. What? He enters people's lives, turns everything upside down, and starts handing out plans like he's delivering pizzas. Not everyone, he replied seriously. So, should I feel honored? She should feel chosen. This caught me in a strange place. Dangerous. Confused. Being chosen isn't always a good thing, you know that, right? I murmured. It depends on who chooses. And what for? He approached again, slowly this time. I did not back down. The diary had dozens of names, Matteo said, his voice low. Traitors, allies, victims. Yours was the only one with that message. And with that symbol. You're no longer just a detail, Helena. You're the axis. Being the axis of anything with you in the middle is the worst and the most... I stopped the word before it slipped out completely. More... What? He pressed, raising an eyebrow. Intense. I changed it. A slight smile appeared. Go get some sleep, he said. Are you going to stay awake? I asked. Someone needs it. You need sleep too, you know that, right? My body knows. My mind doesn't trust. Would you trust me if I stayed awake while you slept? I teased, half seriously, half jokingly. He assessed me as if he were measuring a risk. Maybe another time, he replied. For now, your job is to dream about anything but knives, rings, or trucks. That doesn't depend on me. Then let me at least decide what you do when you're awake. You're too bossy. You talk too much, he replied. A draw. He gestured with his head towards the bed. I lay down, more out of exhaustion than obedience. He turned off the main light, leaving only the bedside lamp on. He sat down in the armchair near the door, with a gun in his hand, on guard duty. What are you doing? I asked, my voice already hoarse with exhaustion. Watching you. Is this supposed to be cute or scary? It's meant to be effective, he replied. I closed my eyes. My last thought before sleep pulled me in was as absurd as everything that had happened in the last few hours. Of all the people in the world, for some reason, I felt safer sleeping with an armed mobster sitting at my door than alone in my high school dorm room. And that, perhaps, was the definitive sign that my life had completely gone off the rails. I woke up with my name on my face, whispered, Helena. I opened my eyes, feeling somewhat disoriented. Morning light streamed into the room from behind the curtains. Matteo was still in the armchair, exactly in the same position, or so it seemed. Did you sleep? I asked, my voice hoarse. A little, he lied badly. The dark circles under my eyes disagree. You snore softly, he commented. I don't snore. Recordings don't lie. You recorded me sleeping? I was bored. You're strange. You already mentioned it. I'll mention it 100 more times. He stood up, stretching his injured shoulder with a small groan that he pretended to swallow. You should let someone take a good look at that, I commented. Have you looked? Someone with a degree, Matteo. Don't you trust your own abilities? I trust them too much. That's precisely why I know when it's an outpatient case, and when it's a hospital case. I don't set foot in hospitals. Trauma? Risk. Another one for the collection. Another one. He looked at his watch. We have 2 hours before the traffic increases on the street. Let's go to the storage unit. Are you serious? Always. Will you at least let me have some coffee before you take me down a dark path through my family's past? The coffee's already in the kitchen. Did you read my mind too? His stomach gave him away. He had an answer for everything. All. Matteo, I called when he arrived at the door. If we really go after my father's things and find something big, that puts you in even more danger, right? Probably. And you're going anyway. I've been in the middle of this since the day I was born, Helena, he said, without drama, just stating the facts. The only difference is that now I have one more thing to lose. My chest tightened. What? You. The word hung in the air, heavy. Before I could answer, he had already left, leaving me with the unsettling and addictive feeling that, in the midst of all that war, the biggest bomb hadn't even exploded yet, and it had nothing to do with a diary, a truck, or a symbol. It had to do with something far more dangerous, the way my heart would start racing every time he said my name. Days later, Matteo and I arrived at the warehouse filled with dusty boxes and old furniture, a time capsule forgotten by the city. He turned on his flashlight, illuminating faded labels from my father's files. Let's see what he was trying to hide, or protect, Matteo said, his voice firm. I crouched down beside him, my eyes scanning a box filled with old documents, yellowed photos and scribbled papers. Look at this, Matteo murmured. pulling out a sealed envelope with the same symbol as the diary. The adrenaline pumping through my lungs at that moment was overwhelming. We carefully opened the envelope, finding a list of names, suspicious transactions, and a folded banknote. For whoever finds this, the truth is buried in blood. It was written in my father's handwriting. I swallowed hard. It was worse than I feared. As we investigated, we felt the danger approaching. Matteo received discreet messages and phone calls, warning us that we were not alone, that the shadows of the past were treading behind us. In the midst of the chaos, Matteo not only protected me, his presence ignited something in me that I didn't know existed. The glances we exchanged were filled with tension. The small, protective gestures spoke of an intense and unexpected chemistry. Between revealed secrets and intensifying dangers, our connection grew, yielding brief moments of intimacy amidst the storm. But it wasn't all struggle and conspiracy. A touch of subtle humor broke the weight of fate when we least expected it. The moment of truth has arrived. We found evidence linking my father to a betrayal that shook Matteo's Mafia empire, a web of lies that cost lives. Matteo stared at me, his eyes dark, and said, "You're not just a part of this story, Helena. You're the key that can destroy everything or save it." I understood that what was at stake was not just our survival, but our future, together. When masked men stormed the warehouse, Matteo stepped in, fiercely protective. In the struggle, he did the unthinkable to protect me, revealing a shocking secret from his past to save my life, showing that his love, though dangerous, was true. Our escape was intense, but our silent promise was stronger. We would face any war, side by side. And so, from the chaos, something unexpected and powerful was born, a romance that burned brighter than any danger. Did you enjoy this story full of secrets, danger, and forbidden passion? Comment below which moment left you breathless and what you would do in Helena's place. Like for more stories full of mystery and suspense that will keep you hooked from beginning to end. Subscribe so you don't miss any chapters of our viral stories that keep everyone glued to the screen. And if you love a romance where the danger is never for her, only for the rest of the world, share it with that friend who loves drama, mystery, and a touch of intense love. I want to know, would you trust someone like Matteo, or would you try to escape this life of shadows? Let's talk.